What is up, everyone? I'm Ryan from Fireside Knicks. The Knicks are coming off of an absolutely remarkable win against the Brooklyn Nets. They didn't just beat them; they beat them across the court, wire to wire. It was an absolute beatdown. The Knicks were able to get scoring started early. The Knicks were able to be offensively beyond just proficient. They were historically great against the Nets in terms of their offensive prowess yesterday, or not yesterday, excuse me, Wednesday, by dropping 140 on them. I'm really impressed by what I've been able to see so far with the Knicks in this stretch. Jalen-Brunson he was magnificent, right? The only reason he didn't get more points is because the Knicks were beating them so bad that, quite frankly, Jalen-Brunson didn't really need to play that second half very much. This game was over basically 4 minutes, 5 minutes into the game. The Knicks had kind of taken over already. First off, how are you doing, Dylan? And second off, what did you see from that game that was impressive? I imagine you have many things that impressed you from that game, but how are you doing today, my friend? And what impressed
Yes,
you in that win against Brooklyn?
yes. I'm doing great. I'm doing great. The Knicks are rolling. 7 wins in a row now. They're phenomenal. And the Nets game was just awesome to watch on every end, every aspect. One thing I really noticed, you mentioned in our last episode that Quentin Grimes was somebody to watch for. And boy, you were right. Because he had, I think, 22 points and he hit six threes. He was not missing for the first half. I think he had like 14 points in the first half and he missed like one shot. He was, obviously everybody was doing great, but him bouncing back like that after kind of struggling since Hart came along was a big thing. And, so you were right on the money with that. And Jalen-Brunson, of course, doing his thing like usual, 30 points in the first half. For the first 5 minutes, he hurt his knee against Bridges in the opening minute. You thought like, oh no, he's hurt. Is he not going to be effective, or is he going to have to get taken out? Worst case, thankfully he was able to stay in the game, and now he was able to stay in the game. But he had his best first half he's had pretty much ever, and he, ended up finishing with 39 points, just another 30 plus point game for him. He's continuing to go off. He won Eastern Conference Player of the Month yesterday. I think the game yesterday helped pretty much establish that for him. I mean, the game Wednesday, excuse me, pretty much established it. And yeah, there were six Knicks in double figures against Brooklyn, which is another huge thing. We had pretty much everybody doing the right thing. We scored 142 points. It's the most we scored, I think, since might be the most we scored all season. I'm not entirely sure about that. I had to double check it. But it's a lot of points, obviously. And then we had 23s. I know for a fact that was the most we've had all season long, 20 made threes. We also shot 57% from three on Wednesday, which is also a season high. So we pretty much were doing everything right on the offensive side. They gave up 118 points. Cam Johnson lit it up. He had 33 points for Brooklyn. Cam Johnson's always been killing us. He had that buzzer beater last year in a 39-point performance last season. So I don't think many Knicks fans forgot about that one. So there's no surprise right there that he was, doing his thing against us. I think he hit like 7 threes. So Cam Johnson did his thing, but our offense was just dominant. And Brooklyn has good defenders. They had, Bridges was on Brunson for most of the game, and Brunson still put up nearly 40 points on him, which is, really, really impressive. We've seen our guys do that against good defenders this year. We saw Julius Randle put up 5 threes in a quarter against OG Anunoby early in the season, and now we just saw Brunson put up nearly 40 on Bridges, which is really impressive there. We stopped Bridges from really doing anything crazy. Bridges had like 21 points, nothing too crazy. So, obviously there were some kinks in the defense because we did give up quite a bit of threes, but overall, I'm still very happy with the performance that the Knicks did on Wednesday because, you know, the offense was just like went crazy, went up on a different level. We've seen the offense been great over this winning streak. They've been averaging close to 115 points already, but they were just locking everything up. They were knocking everything. Like first half, it felt like they weren't going to miss a shot. Like they were just, I don't know what got into them, but I was really impressed with it. That was a very, very impressive win, and I'm hoping we see it again tonight against Miami.
Yeah, that was an impressive win, and that's a win that, quite frankly, it changed it changed the outlook of this team in the sense of, you push yourself further into the fifth seed. You propel yourself in a position where you're very close to that fourth seed, right? You're closer to the fourth seed than you are the sixth seed, right? So a lot of really good things there. As you mentioned, I feel like, with Quentin Grimes, I know that I came into into that game with, he's got to perform well, and I think that's a key piece to their success that night. And he popped off, but I think it was a quick release. I feel like once he got the ball, he knew I got to catch and shoot this. I feel like sometimes he kind of second guesses himself, or sometimes he isn't entirely sure about whether he should take a three or he should drive to the basket. He's got a really good 3-point shot. He's got a quick release. It's hard to really try to guard Grimes and try to stop him in that catch and shoot situation, because with that quick release, you really have to beat him to the spot. If you're not beating him to the spot, he's getting an uncontested look off before you can even get there. So I think that the more he can continue to kind of develop his 3-and-D game, yes, I think he has shot creating ability and a potential that goes beyond just being a 3-and-D guy. But right now for this Knicks team, they need him to be that guy. And I think that as he kind of, progresses in that role, he'll continue to improve for the Knicks. You mentioned Josh Hart, how kind of since he's gotten here, it's been a little bit of a struggle for Grimes. But Josh Hart, you would say, you look at his box score and you go, oh, he only, he scored 4 points. Did he really do that much? It's another example of him having an impactful game without doing much in the scoring sheet. He's kind of someone who can always just have a positive impact on the game. Even Emmanuel Quickly, I've mentioned Emmanuel Quickly and Josh Hart as like glue guys that, they're always having a positive impact on the game. Quickly had more impressive, points scored, I guess, but he wasn't really someone that was highlighted last night. Both of these guys were big contributors in that win. Both those guys, when the bench unit came in, those were leaders off the bench. Those guys kind of allowed the Knicks to continue to fend off, the Nets and continue to build on that lead. It didn't really feel like that the game was in doubt at any point in time, and a strong bench is a big part of that. So, what do you think that we're reaching a point where Josh Hart's kind of evolving into his role and continuing to improve? This team's played a lot better with him. I think we're at a 7-game sample size now. Can we really sit here and say it's just a mystery that the Knicks have played so well with Josh Hart? Is it fair to say that this guy's kind of the glue guy for this team, that this team's needed, and has kind of been one of the best acquisitions at the deadline for the Knicks? Where do you think Josh Hart how do you view Josh Hart as a trade piece, and where do you kind of view a potential contract you give him? Because I think we have to keep him around for a pretty long time.
Right, right. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we're 7-0 with Josh Hart since he came along. I don't. He, like I've mentioned before in previous episodes, he's a pretty seamless fit. He gives you pretty much everything you need. He can shoot, he drives to the basket, he moves the ball, plays with great pace, defense, all that good stuff. He's a jack of all trades type of guy. So, and he's a Tibbs player too. He plays hard, he hustles, like you said. He only had 4 points the other night, but he still provided a huge impact on everything else, on the defense, moving the ball, all this kind of stuff. He still provided an impact. He's a guy that, you don't need 50 points out of him to show his impact. You see his impact by watching the game, not by looking at the box score. And I think that's a big thing right there, which is why, I don't think it's, like I said, I don't think it's a coincidence that we're 7-0 with Hart. And I definitely think at this point, it's only a 7-game size, yes, but I think we've already seen more than enough of what Hart can do to us with us, and like how much better just we are with him, and like how much deeper of a team we are with him. Because instantly, once he came over, our bench became, a much more, liable threat, I guess if you could say. Because, before he came along, Quickly was our only like serious threat off the bench. He was the only one really scoring. He was easily our most impactful defender. You look at our bench scoring overall was one of the lowest in the NBA before Hart came along. Now that Hart's here, we're one of the higher scoring benches in the league, and I don't think that's a coincidence any sort of way. We have him in closing lineups. He's great in there. He plays well with the starters. He plays well with the second unit. He destroys other teams' second units. I think that's very, very, very huge to have. Not many teams are blessed to have a guy like that. So I think we definitely need to keep this guy around for a while. You don't need to give him too much money because he's a bench guy. But I definitely think he's a glue guy and an important piece at that. I think he's an extremely important piece. So I definitely think we need to keep him around for a while because right now with what I'm seeing, we suddenly look like a serious like Eastern Conference Finals threat. All of a sudden, we went from fringe playoff contender to serious threat in the playoffs just within a couple weeks of having Josh Hart. So yeah, I definitely think his impact has deserved him a longer stay here in New York.
Yeah, absolutely. And end of the day, the New York Knicks look phenomenal, right? And I think as you mentioned, going from that fringe playoff team here to like, hey, this team is not a team you want to face in the postseason. This team can really surprise some people. And Josh Hart's obviously been a big part of this bench. Emmanuel quickly again had a really good night last night, or Wednesday night last night. I mean, Wednesday night he had a really good night. He's continued to kind of he's continued to play efficient basketball. I think his efficiency is the best of his career this year. He's his six man of the year odds, man. They were plus 2,000, they were plus 2,800 on February 28th. Now here on March 5th, they are plus 480, plus looking at different sports books, plus 480 on FanDuel, plus 500 on BetGM, plus 300 on Caesars sports books, right? Like, it's getting better, right? People are, keep talking about Emmanuel quickly because the odds, it's reflecting the odds make in the odds, it's reflecting in the kind of the consensus around him. This guy's giving you an efficient 13 points a game. This guy's giving you great defense. This guy's one of the best perimeter defenders the Knicks can possibly throw at you, and not just on the Knicks, but quite frankly in the Eastern Conference. He's a pest, man. He really has figured out how to play some strong defense at a high level. As Emmanuel, there are some. I think there was a rumor. I think it was this morning, or maybe last night, that the Knicks could potentially look to give Emmanuel quickly a long-term extension. Do you think that's in the plans for the Summers? Do you think that do you think Emmanuel quickly is going to be someone that you view as someone as part of this core? Because I think he's part of, when I look at the core here, I'm looking at Brunson, Randle, Robinson, but I think quickly is a huge part of that core. What do you think there for quickly in terms of this year and then looking towards the future?
Right, right. I definitely agree with you. Quickly is definitely part of this core now. I think, he's shown a lot more since December, because December we were pretty worried about him because he got off to a very slow start. He was only averaging like 9 points a game and he was shooting very low efficiency. We were getting worried about him, and that's when all the trade rumors started to come about and all that. He just like kicked it up into another level. Now he's easily one of the best six men in the NBA. Like you said, now he's second in odds for winning the award. Right now, I still think that's Malcolm Brogdon's award to lose, but quickly is quickly, pun intended right there, has quickly catapulted himself into the six man running. And I definitely think, just that alone, it makes him a key piece. We don't have much bench depth. We don't have guys that are able. We don't have as many guys that are able to guard both guard positions. The shooting guard and the point guard, play both guard positions offensively because he does both of those really well. We've seen him do it a few times this year, and he's been great in both those roles. I think too, just like his on court leadership. When he's on the court, everything's different. The pace is better. The defense is tighter. I think the way he just controls the game is a big thing, and therefore I think we need to, he's part of the core, and we definitely need to keep him around for much longer too, because with the way he's playing right now, he's only going to get better, I think. So if that's the case, which I think it will, we need to keep him around for longer and make him a part of our core, in which we hope to become, soon to be a serious like finals contender. I know right now we're not at that point, but looking into the future, right where we're at right now, we're not that far away from it. So I definitely think he needs to stick around for a while and become, a key piece for us going forward. I think he's that important.
Yeah, and end of the day, the Knicks have kind of kept a lot. They have a lot of their core locked in. I've mentioned Robinson, Randle, Brunson. Barrett is locked in, and he played really well against the Nets, in my opinion. I think he filled in his role nicely. But kind of looking at a matchup against Miami now. This is the game. We've been talking about this week as we've been hyping up this week as a huge week for the Knicks, and the Knicks have delivered. They have played two great games of basketball and have won two crucial games. Now looking ahead at this game against Miami, right? This is the final game of this onslaught, right? And then you kind of peek ahead a little bit, and you've got another matchup, with Boston right after that, and then you have to look too far ahead for a West Coast trip where you're facing Sacramento, both Los Angeles teams, and Portland. This game's huge for the Knicks. This game is an opportunity to kind of stamp and kind of say, what, we're not just happy with a good week. We're gonna have the best possible week possible. We're gonna make a statement. Who is that key guy for you tonight against Miami? Who is that guy that tonight is their night? Tonight is the night they can step it up and they can really they can help the Knicks, put an asterisk, put an exclamation point on what was a crucial week for them.
Right, right. I think that guy's Julius Randle. I think Julius Randle is going to come out, and like you said, it's a statement night for the Knicks, make a statement. I think it's also a statement night for Julius, for anybody that's, continued to doubt him or think that it's just a hot season for him. This is kind of a stamp for Julius too, to be like, no, I can do this. I can be, a guy that can lead a team. I can be a guy that can, I'm a superstar level player. I think that's what, he can do tonight. And I think, I'm expecting a big night out of him. I know it's going to be a little tough because he's probably going to have Bam Adebayo guarding him. But, we've seen Julius Randle do this kind of things two tough defenders all season long. I remember I mentioned before he did really well against OG Anunoby early in the season. He did well against Jason Tatum earlier, like a couple weeks ago against Boston. And now obviously a few days ago he did the same thing. I think Julius Randle's in for a big night. He had like what 21 points against Brooklyn the other night. Not like a high scoring game, but he still had 8 assists, 8 rebounds. Very good night overall. I think he's in for a big night. We're talking like 30 points tonight. I think we could see that out of him. I would certainly definitely watch for that because also I've noticed too, Randle really seems to kick it up into a fourth gear on the road. The Knicks have already been a great road team this year, but it seems like whenever Randle goes out on the road, he tries to make a statement to the teams he's playing against while on the road. Like, look, I'm here, so now you guys have a problem to deal with. You have to deal with me. I feel like that's the type of guy Julius is, and I feel like that's what he's going to do tonight. So I would definitely watch for him. If I were to bring up another guy to watch for, I'd watch for Brunson again. He just won Eastern Conference Player of the Month. I definitely think he's someone to watch for. The guard play of Miami has not been the best. They've had Kyle Lowry be underperforming this year. And I don't know if he's playing tonight, but you got him, and they don't have as much depth there in the bench as well. And I feel like if we can get like our starting units out, some of our starting players out there while those bench guys are out there, we can use that to our advantage and attack them. And I think Brunson's also in for big nights. So I definitely think overall, our star duo of Brunson and Randle, they're in for a big night tonight. I definitely see it. I know I say that a lot, but they do it consistently every night. Every night it seems like they're consistently having big nights, one after either, whether it's both of them or one of them. Some one of those two at least is having a big night because we're getting the consistent form of them now at this point. This isn't like last year where we were having an inconsistent Randle. You weren't sure if you were getting a great Julius Randle, if you were getting a bad Julius Randle. Same thing with like RJ Barrett. This year it's a little different. I think this year you're getting way more consistent versions of like Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle. You're getting way more consistent out of that. So, again, I think they're in for a big night for sure.
Yeah, I think that you're looking at Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson. They have answered the call at every step of the way, as you mentioned. These two guys have rose to the occasion. They've rarely left me feeling they let like I've been let down in a big game. But the guy I'm looking at tonight is RJ Barrett. He's going to most likely be guarded by a Tyler Hero type player. Jimmy Butler is most likely going to be focusing his game on trying to stop Jalen Brunson. Right, you're going to have a defender like Butler on a guy like Brunson, and as you mentioned, Bam is going to be on a guy like Randle. If you're RJ Barrett, tonight you can be that. You've kind of always been the third ball handler on this team. You've always been the third scoring option, right? In that starting lineup, you're gonna be on a defender that isn't very good is going to be on you. Probably, they're putting Hero on you because they don't have anyone else to put on you, and you should be able to take on that challenge and really, really have a really good night tonight. This could be a night where RJ gives you that efficient 20 points per game and he hits those big shots late in the game. I'm not looking for the first half to be a big first half. He's going to have a quiet first half. He'll take 3 or 4 shots. He'll make 2 of them, right? It'll look like RJ Barrett's just kind of taking a back seat. And then that fourth quarter when Bam is on the court for the entire quarter or nearly the entire quarter, and Butler's on the court for nearly the entire quarter, and Brunson and Randle are a little bit tired, right? This is crunch time. They're doubling one of those two guys. They're doing whatever they can to stop them. And RJ Barrett is going to be asked to step up in this offense. And I think this is the night for him, right? I manifested it with Quentin Grimes. I hope I can manifest it with RJ tonight because I think what we saw against Brooklyn, he just kind of let the game come to him, right? I think something that a lot of people look at for star players, going after the game, just kind of going out and getting it, right? But there are certain players who they just flow very well and they just let the game come to them. Josh Hart, Emmanuel Quickly, RJ Barrett doesn't like RJ Barrett is a more talented player than Josh Hart, in my opinion, but Josh Hart's been the more productive player this year. Can RJ Barrett kind of realize, I'm a talented player, but I just got to let the game come to me? Defensive assignments, just kind of play my role, which I think he did well against Brooklyn. Yes, Brooklyn dropped 118, but a lot of those points were garbage time. You just kind of let them score at that point because it's easier to let them score than it is to foul them. It runs more time off the clock. So, if you're RJ Barrett, you can have a night where you can have that big fourth quarter where you can really impact a game that is going to have a lot of playoff implications. It's time to change the narrative around yourself. You know what I mean? A lot of people are kind of looking at RJ as a salary filler in a deal, someone you're trading in the offseason, right? If you can be a glue guy for this team, right? Now, why would you trade a player that's helping you, right? Now you're a player that helps a team, and this team has done all of this with a struggling RJ Barrett, an inconsistent RJ Barrett. And RJ Barrett that plays the way that I think he's played in the second half, or coming out of the All-Star break, is an RJ Barrett that is going to make this team that much better, right? You look at this rotation, and I would say it's probably Obi Toppin and RJ Barrett that are like the players who are kind of lackluster, right? Or haven't played to the level that, you're like, yeah, these guys are excelling in their roles. They've kind of just been all right, and all right isn't bad, but all right isn't for a team that doesn't have a superstar, right, or doesn't have that MVP caliber player, right? RJ Barrett and Obi Toppin you would like to see a little bit more there. And I think RJ definitely has it. His plus minus since the All-Star break's been positive. His 3-point shot's been falling. He's been taking his shot diet has improved. He hasn't taken as many shots. He's just kind of let the offense come to him. And I think that's going to play a really big part in the Knicks' success if they're to win tonight.
No, yeah, I definitely agree. You're not wrong. I can definitely see a big night out of RJ because Tyler Hero's on him. Well, most likely will be on him because, like you said, they don't have many guys that can really defend the wings like that. So other than Jimmy Butler, but Jimmy Butler will probably be on Brunson, like you mentioned. So yeah, I could definitely see a big night from RJ. And like you to bring up your point too, you know, with how deep this Knicks team is right now, we don't really need RJ Barrett to be dropping 30, 40 points like he was last year. Because last year, we didn't have much depth. We kind of needed him to do that. And unfortunately, even with him doing that, we weren't winning games. Now, right now, with how he's playing, we obviously don't have RJ Barrett at his best right now. I don't think that's really an understatement. It's just kind of a fact. But, you know, we're winning all these games with that, with like you mentioned, which is very big sign because if RJ can really kick it into fourth gear and get back to what his old form was like that, then we could be really something in the playoffs, and other teams will see that and be like, man, they're already a good team, and now RJ's playing at his best. That could be a serious problem. So I definitely, agree. He's still being impactful right now. Out of the All-Star break, he's been a lot better. Like you said, I've noticed that myself. I know he's not putting up like 30 points, but he's had a couple very good games, very efficient games. His defense seems a little bit better too. He seems like he's giving more effort on that end of the floor. So yeah, I definitely agree with you. RJ could be in for a big night. We shall see how it goes, but you manifested Grimes, so I have faith in you that you'll be right about Barrett too. So we shall see how that goes. But yeah, I definitely think RJ has been a lot better, and I think he's doing what we need him to do. We don't need him, like I mentioned, we don't need him to drop 40 points. We just need him to do his role and do it properly, and I think right now he's doing just that. So if he continues to do that, then that's great. If he has a big game, that's awesome. But right now I'm pleased with what he's doing out of the All-Star break because before the All-Star break he was slumping. And while we were still winning games, you don't want that to go into the playoffs because if RJ is struggling going into the playoffs, that could hurt you because in the playoffs teams will center their game plans around our stars. They're going to center them around Brunson and Randle specifically. So you kind of want that third guy, which is RJ in this case, to be at a better level so that we have that fallback option so that teams will have no choice but to focus on him, and that leaves the door open for Brunson and Randle and stuff like that. So yeah, that's my point right there.
Yeah, and so kind of to kind of wrap things up a little bit here in terms of how the Knicks have played lately, their matchup against Miami. We've talked about some key figures here. I think kind of an important thing for us to make sure we address ahead of this game is just really. I want to take a moment to kind of just number one, appreciate this team, but number two, this team is going to enter another pretty tough stretch. And time again, I feel like, looking at the schedule, you're like, well, this is a stretch where you have to prove it, right? We felt like that we were coming into this week. That's how I get kind of been pushing this week as like, this is like the week for the Knicks to kind of prove themselves, right? I've kind of hinted at that at West Coast trip. Looking at the rest of the schedule, this team has a real shot to finish as a 5 seed, but they also have kind of an outside chance at finishing at that 4th seed. Where do you think the Knicks 4th, 5th, 6th seed? I think those are kind of the 3 most likely outcomes. Where do you think the Knicks end up at the season's end? And if they are to end up, where do you think they end up? Who do you think they face off in the first round?
Right, right. So, they do have an outside chance at fourth, but I realistically do think they're going to end up fifth, which, is I'll be more than happy with because I thought they were maybe a play-in team coming into the season. So, of course, I'll be way more than happy with a fifth seed, but I do think that's a likely outcome because, we're close on Cleveland right now, but Cleveland is a good team, and we do have a tough stretch coming up. We have a West Coast trip. Playing on the West Coast on the road is tough for any team in the East Coast. So doing that right there might hurt us a little bit. Eventually too, we're going to lose a game once in a while. We're not going to win every game. It's just that's not how the sport works. So, the winning streak won't last forever. So, I don't think we'll necessarily get like really cold, but we're gonna slow down a little bit. I think that's just gonna happen. It's natural. So given like those type of things, and the stretch, like I said, the stretch coming up, and how Cleveland is a good team. We do play Cleveland again this season at the very end of this month, but and hopefully by then we'll have a much more clearer picture of where the Knicks would end up. But suddenly that game looks way more important than it did a few weeks ago. I'll tell you that. But like I was saying, I do think fifth seed is the most likely outcome. But I'll be happy with that. I think we'd end up playing Cleveland in the first round if that is the case. We end up being the fifth seed. I do think we'd end up playing them. I feel like Cleveland is gonna. If we don't eclipse Cleveland for fourth, I feel like Cleveland is gonna stay there because Cleveland is a really good team. But I don't think they're necessarily better than Philly, Milwaukee, and Boston. I think Milwaukee, Philly, and Boston will stay 1, 2, 3 in whatever order it ends up being. I think Cleveland will settle for fourth. You know, Cleveland will get the home court advantage, obviously, if they're the fourth seed. But we've played well on the road, so that's not necessarily just like that's not like a bad thing for us. Most teams agreeing on the road is a bad thing. I know in the playoffs is a different atmosphere, but we have done our job on the road, so I like our confidence there in that regard. But yeah, to wrap up the point, I do think fifth seed is a likely outcome, and we play Cleveland first round, and I like our chances there. It's a good matchup for us. We've handled Cleveland in the regular season. I like the matchup. I think it would be an exciting series. It could be a 6 or 7 game series. Could go really either way. I think it's a pretty even matchup at this point now. Now that we have Josh Hart and a deep squad, I think that's an even matchup. So yeah.
Yeah, again, I mean, I personally, I have to agree with you. I think they're the fifth seed. Just I look at Cleveland's schedule, and I don't think there's a lot of tough matchups in there for them. And also, it's in a weird sense, they play Brooklyn and Miami twice each, and in those games, I feel like I'm kind of rooting for Cleveland to win, right? Like I'd rather, guarantee a matchup I'd rather guarantee myself as a fifth seed than kind of let Cleveland, lose to those teams and let Brooklyn and Miami kind of get hot again. Brooklyn's only what a game and a half back from us, right? All it takes is one bad week, and now you're back in the fifth seed, the sixth seed, looking at and the seventh seed. Your Miami could be right on your hot on your tail. So the way I look at it is, at this point, I'd kind of just prefer Cleveland beat them, and prefer that you establish yourself at the fifth seed. You're playing Cleveland regardless. Yes, the home court matters, but I would say I'd rather be the away team in that series, than jeopardize even having that type of first round matchup. Because if you fall to the 60, now you're playing a Philly team who, as you mentioned, I think is just there's just a talent level gap between them and Cleveland, with having a Joel Embiid and having a James Harden, versus Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland kind of led team in terms of scoring, and in terms of just overall playing. I mean, Embiid's the best player between both those teams. I don't think that's very close either. So end of the day, I think this team's continuing to impress. I think this team continues to have you ask questions, reevaluating their ceiling, kind of elevating their ceiling a little bit more. And I'm really impressed by that. So I don't know if you have any final thoughts before we wrap up, but if you do, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Right, right. Just to wrap up, this pretty much, I'm looking forward to a big game against Miami. It's a huge game, statement game, like you mentioned. It can also create a lot of separation between them in the standings because Miami was on our tail. Now they're a little bit further back. But if we beat them tonight, we can be, we create a lot more separation. And you start to think no more about the seventh seed. You start thinking about sixth and fifth. You start thinking about like, okay, they're probably going to be in the playoffs. Where are they going to end up in the playoffs? Because before the whole thing was about the play-in. Oh, they're going to be a seventh seed. Da, da, da. That was the whole thing before season. Right now, it's about fifth or sixth. And I think if you win against Miami tonight, that kind of solidifies that case. Like, okay, yeah, they're probably going to end up being the fifth or sixth seed. It just depends where they go the rest of the way. But to wrap it up real quick, big game tonight. Hopefully they win this one. They got a big stretch coming up against the West Coast after tonight and after Boston. So we're going to see a lot more of what this team is capable of. It's a true test. But right now, I'm very impressed with what this team's doing. I couldn't be any more impressed, really. It's the most fun I've had personally watching this team in quite a long time. It's more fun than I even had in 2021 when we made the playoffs. So I'm really looking forward to what this team can do, and I feel very confident about not only winning these games down the stretch, but also how we would do in the playoffs. I'm very confident about those things. So I'm really looking forward to it. Let's hope we get a good game tonight. Let's hope we get some big nights from Brunson, Randall, and/or Barrett. Let's hope we get big games from those guys. And let's just keep it moving. One game at a time. No, keep your foot on the gas and just keep going. Don't slow down. That's the way I see it, and I'm pretty sure that's the way the Knicks are seeing it as well. So let's keep it going.
Yeah, I 100% agree. This is an opportunity to leave your mark and to let people know, like, this isn't the Knicks of old. You're changing the narrative. The conversation around this team needs to be different, and I'm really excited. So thank you guys again so much for tuning in. We appreciate your guys' continued support. I'm Ryan Garcia. This is Dylan Backer. You guys can check us out on our Twitters. That's above our heads. Check out the Fireside Knicks Twitter. Check out our socials. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace out.